Hi, I'm VillainTheory, and today I want to talk about mission planning. Now, I was, browsing the internet as you do, and I came across two players having, what would at a glance seem like a very innocent conversation. One of them is saying, what's the point of mission planning? Do I even need this card? To which the other player is like, nah, man, I didn't even sleeve my card, my mission planning. You don't, it's not that good. And I'm thinking, wow, you're not sleeving the card? That's gotta be a bad card. Is this the worst card from Next Evolution? To which I say, no, I don't think so. And rather than, hunt down, pick apart cards, which card is the worst? I want to celebrate this card. I want to convince you guys that mission planning is not the worst card from Next Evolution. You might not even be thinking that, but there's definitely the impression I got from this conversation. And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about it and showcase what this card can do. So I think this card lends itself to being built around. You can have this as the centerpiece of a deck and build from there. Yeah, you could have just a general, leadership deck, throw one of these in, and it'll still be fine. But you can really build around this and do some crazy combos. So it's a 2-cost event, that's fine. But what it does is until the end of the phase, allies you control do not take consequential damage. So it's kind of like healing them in advance. And the problem here is there are a lot of good cheap healing options, ways to replay, good allies again, kind of heal them if you bring them back from the discard pile, right? But you've also just got the ability to play, 2-cost allies. You could get a whole fresh ally for this cost. And the other problem with mission planning is you can only play it if there's a side scheme in the victory display. There's a new type of player card called player side schemes, and they all go into the victory display. So the problems we have are that mission planning is conditional. You need a side scheme in the victory display. This is kind of a two-part hoop because you need to find the side scheme and then it needs to be defeated to go into the victory display. You also need allies to be in play. Now this might seem silly, it's leadership, of course you're going to get allies in play, but the problem is, since it's 2-cost to reduce consequential damage, if you just have any old regular ally out and use it with mission planning, you're only preventing 1 damage. 1 damage for 3 effective resources. What I mean by effective resources is it has 2 printed costs, but if you play it from your hand and you spend cards on it, you pay the 2 cards, 2 cost, but then you lose the card itself. You go from 5 cards to 2. So it has a fair bit of cost in that regard. So really, 1 point of healing for 3 cost is very bad. We have core set cards which do better. So yeah, preventing slash healing, the damage kind of similar. We have better for, a low amount of allies or ally activation. So yeah, you need allies to be in play, but you need enough or, enough activations on them to make it worth it. And that takes quite a bit to get to. And the third hoop is not only do you need to find that side scheme, get in the victory display, get enough allies so, ready's in play, you need to then draw mission planning. Now, if you find 2 of these in your mulligan, that's going to be an issue. If you find 2 in your opening hand, or maybe even all 3 early on, by the time you are set up to use mission planning, it's in your discard pile. And yeah, you can wait for it to come back around, but that is quite a long time for a deck dedicated to this card. So that's a problem. So we need to tackle all 3 of these hoops. And I'm actually going to talk about the second one first, but we'll come to that shortly. The competition mission planning phases is First Aid, United We Stand, and Rapid Response. And I could add Reinforced Suits, maybe make the call and regroup. Team Training adds HP to allies. So there are a lot of ways to keep allies healthier than, they would otherwise be without these tools. And a lot of these cards are really good. First Aid heals 2 damage. It's 1 cost less. You can use it on identities or other people's allies. So it's a lot more flexible and less conditional. United We Stand, 0 cost. First Aid is already cheaper than, mission planning, but United We Stand, 0 cost. Heal 1 damage from up to X for any characters, equal to where X is, equal to the villain stage number. I normally play Expert. This is normally 1 healing from 2 characters. So again, like First Aid, we're getting 2 points of total healing. You could think of this like 2 less consequential damage, in this way, kind of this use. Then Rapid Response just brings an ally back into play. Yeah, a little bit of damage on them, but it can be a very expensive, good ally, and it can have an enters play effect, which is very good. Rapid Response, easily one of the best cards in leadership and the game. So, mission planning has some stiff competition. However, we can make the conditions on mission planning worth meeting, and that is what we need to do. So, how do we make mission planning worth it? Well, since it's so very conditional, we need to, basically aim for the sky, aim for the moon. You need to make it as profitable as possible. So you need a lot of ally activation. So you need to block a lot of consequential damage and get a lot out of doing so. One option to get that going is to bring more allies. More allies you have, the more consequential damage you block, the more allies you're keeping healthier for longer. You're getting so you're getting value there. The problem is cheap allies that are the easy ones to build out wide are not very strong. You might only be getting a couple points of damage, one, maybe two. Your mission planning is not going to get as much as if, they were big, really, powerful allies hitting for 3 or 4, or maybe even more. And you've then got to set up things like Triskelion and Nowhere to actually get that wide board of allies. So yeah, it's fine, but this is not my preferred option. What I like to do is go for readying. Take a big, powerful ally and just keep using that one multiple times. Preferably 2, 3 if you're really lucky, but I will say in solo at least, games with this kind of build actually haven't taken that long for me. You kind of either win quick or lose quick. It's a really strange kind of rush with extra steps kind of deal almost. It's not really a rush, it's kind of more in the middle, but it's interesting for sure. So get ready, 0 cost event from the core set. Ready's an ally, very good. Command team is kind of its newer version. It's more expensive, but for its cost, it is kind of the same. So get ready is 0 cost, 1 effective resource. You play it, you are 1 card down in your hand. You have a ready on an ally. Command team played from the hand, with cards in hand. You're now 3 cards down, but you have 3 readies. They're kind of equivalent in that regard. But in regards to mission planning, you want get ready and mission planning in the same hand, whereas command team, you can play it in advance and you're fine. It's just going to wait for you to get mission planning. So I personally prefer command team here, but what I prefer even to command team is Sky Cycle. A lot of the most powerful allies are all Avengers. Sky Cycle goes in an Avenger, just readies them once a turn. So it's kind of like a command team just for 1 ally, but it is infinite and pretty cheap. So really, really like that. And then we have Avengers Assemble. This is a great card, it readies all your Avengers, gives them a bonus to stats, works with everything else we've been talking about, but it's expensive. 5 effective resources, mission planning is 3 effective resources. You need 8 resources in 1 turn, and to find Avengers Assemble and mission planning together on that turn in the first place. So it has to have a lot of things, all come together at once. That's not to say you couldn't run it, in the same deck. You can even, Avengers Assemble is still good. You can close out a lot of games with it, even, without trying to do anything fancy with mission planning. But to me, it's a little bit too much. So I've really focused on the command team and Sky Cycle in my builds personally. The third option, which we're not going to really discuss too much here, you can take 1 ally, 1 really good ally, and just, chuck a bunch of upgrades on it, kind of, vulture on it, and put all your readies, a bunch of command teams, maybe get readies, all on this 1 ally that you really want to use. I think there are a couple of good candidates for that, but I do think that's, less consistent than, hedging your bets, spreading it out, a few different good allies out and getting a couple of Sky Cycles onto them. I think that's just more consistent, really. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So a great ally, for example, would be Giant Man. But there's a few other ones. I really like Ronin. Anything with 2 attack starts to look good. Anything with 3 or 4 attack starts to look really good. Just with Giant Man, Sky Cycle, and Command Team, if a mission planning is in play, that's 12 damage. Every time mission planning comes up, I can get 12 damage out of this combo. If I have another ally, with at least 3 attack, I can maybe get, 20. And if I have another command team, 23 every time mission planning comes up. So yeah, you have to get some setup going, some things in play, but once they're in play, mission planning is just allowing these crazy, high value readies, which I really, really enjoy. There are some characters that, have ways to, help with that, which we're going to get into, and even some new cards which help with that. But the other problem is, we've talked about getting the second hoop, getting enough allies and readying, going to make mission planning worth it. To let us even play mission planning, we need side schemes in the victory display. For my money, in my opinion, I think you want to take at least 3. At the moment, leadership only really has 3 it can take: 2 basics, 1 leadership, call for backup, build support, and superpower training. Now, superpower training is varies with the hero because it only finds identity specific upgrades. So it can be really good, or it can just be kind of, mediocre depending on your hero. But I think just for the sake of getting mission planning online quicker, you want to take it. Build support, however, really good. You can grab Mighty Avengers, which, works with, we're talking about Avengers a lot here because they have some really high value allies. The mission, Mighty Avengers is really good alongside mission planning with all those readies with Avengers. But command team, whatever allies you're bringing is always really good for them, and that's the support you can find with build support. Or for backup, however, easily the best one, definitely for this kind of deck. Defeating Call for Backup gets you that side scheme in the victory display to enable mission planning and gets you a massive ally. You can just pick your best ally to start readying and have that in play as well. So you take out the first hoop, you jump through that, and you start to jump through the second hoop all at once. Um, and these are really good in multiplayer. So in solo, you're aiming for free threat removal in a given turn to remove them, which is easier in some respects. But in multiplayer, side schemes, player side schemes get even better. So yeah, really good options here. I would, in solo, definitely take all three myself. In multiplayer, if multiple people are bringing them and leaning into side schemes, even better. But that's not everything. Third hoop is we need to get mission planning at the right time. And while we're trying to get down some allies, find a side scheme and defeat it, it's very easy to go past a couple of mission plannings. And that's the problem. Leadership training is a solution, is a one-cost support, exhaust it, remove a counter, grab a blue event, leadership from your discard pile, shuffle it back in your deck. The problem is you're paying just to move a card into your deck, and then you still have to try and draw it. You might not draw it in your next hand, and you have to go alter ego. So I like this card for longer games. I think in multiplayer this can be good, but for my money, what I really like to do this with is Black Panther. He's a really good full cost ally. Stats aren't great for the cost, but he can grab any event you want from leadership from your discard pile, and he'll just hold on to it. So when you're getting these crazy, maybe up to 20 damage, turns from mission planning, being able to just grab it and have it ready is so good. You can even ignore, the fact that Black Panther gets double consequential damage just for a Sky Cycle on him. Whenever you play mission planning, now you're getting 4 damage out of Black Panther minimum. So it's not, the best value, but it's very convenient and can really help with the timing of mission planning. So hopefully I've shown you guys, with a lot of readying and some good allies, you can get actually a lot of value out of mission planning. But you kind of got to get it set up. So I want to show you some practical examples of some decks I've built. These are not refined to the level I would normally publish, on Marvel CDB, but nonetheless, I think they are good. I've had fun, so hopefully you guys will like them as well. The first one is Maximus Magic Mission. This is a Scarlet Witch deck that is all about using Summoning Spell and Chaos Magic to bring in those big allies that we want, ready and use with mission planning for cheap and find them faster. She also has Quicksilver, who is a big ally who has built-in readying. So if you have Quicksilver and say Mighty Avengers with a Sky Cycle, you're getting 3 activations just from that for 3 damage each. So that's really fun. I like it. I think it's good. She also, all these characters we're going to look at are really good at threat removal for side schemes. They don't need to block too much. They either have, a good amount of health or some kind of defensive mechanic. Scarlet Witch will have a Hexbolt for status cards and 3 copies of Magic Shield, so she does not need to block with allies very often if she, tries to avoid it. And she's naturally an Avenger, which is really good for Mighty Avengers. One of the problems with Scarlet Witch, problems, is Summoning Spell can blow past your mission plannings or even your side schemes, so you can get a really good ally into play for cheap, but now half your deck is gone. Now, she does work through her deck really quickly. That is one of her advantages. Lots of card draw and card cycling with, her alter ego abilities, spiritual meditation, hexbolt. So you will come back to things quickly, but it is worth noting that, if you have an option between summoning spell or maybe just playing that good ally in hand, there are advantages to sometimes choosing the ally with this deck, but in general, I find it works very well. Up next, we have Spider-Woman. This was the, I had the original idea with Scarlet Witch, but then I sort of built this deck first, but I ended up going back to Scarlet Witch. This deck has crazy potential because taking half your cards as aggression cards can bring in Boot Camp, which boosts all your damage as well on top of, Mighty Avengers or something like that. Those are not essential to play, but they are really nice if you can get them into play, especially, build support. But aggression allies are useful. Wasp is a very, very cheap free attack ally. You can get 4 who, if you spend an energy, can hit multiple minions. You've got some really interesting options here with, the aggression allies. But the main benefit is Enraged. This card here, as you can now see on screen, +2 attack, +1 consequential damage. Very, very strong when mission planning means I don't care about consequential damage. If now that you don't care about consequential damage and you have readies like Command Team and Sky Cycle, you're getting that +2 attack multiple times. Very easy to get a 5 attack ally going in aggression here and leadership, in Spider-Woman, and start readying them. But the problem is Sky Cycle and Enraged is, kind of double the upgrade setup. because you have to split your card between aspects, less room for, let's say command teams and things like that. So it is a bit of a struggle. And, if your opening hand is Sky Cycle and Enraged and Mission Planning, that's very grim. You can't do anything with that. Other advantage with Spider-Woman is, of course, Captain Marvel. Definitely the best target to set up in this deck. Captain Marvel is just one of the best allies in the game. Um, Honestly, maybe in both her forms, but specifically, I'm talking about a signature ally here. But we will talk about the other version of Captain Marvel. So yeah, I would say the Spider-Woman deck is less reliable than Scarlet Witch because you've got more setup to do. You also don't have as much card draw or ways to cheat allies in, like summoning spell. Um, but the potential with enraged damage and boot camp is enormous. So this is kind of the fun but less consistent version, whereas Scarlet, which is a lot more consistent. Speaking of consistency, we've then got Rogue. So she's not an Avenger, but she can get the Avenger trait with Touched, so Mighty Avengers is still on the table. She also has lots of threat removal as the Spider-Woman and Scarlet Witch to remove player side schemes. And again, everyone here is pretty formidable. They're not going to be needing to block with allies too much. The main advantage here with Rogue is superpower adaptation can grab mission planning when you need it. This is really strong. This is the reason you would use Rogue for this kind of deck. So if I set everything up and my mission plannings, a normal deck would have to wait. Rogue has effectively 6 copies of superpower of mission planning because of superpower adaptation. It's good. It's really convenient. It's maybe not as powerful as Scarlet Witch or Spider Woman if those decks line up, but if things go wrong in those decks, getting Rogue being able to just grab mission planning or superpower adaptation just smooths things out incredibly well. So I think this is actually a really strong option worthy of a mention. But my favorite is actually Cable. So the Cable deck looks a lot different to the others because Cable can guarantee call for backup on turn 1. Now, this means you're going to be able to defeat the side scheme, probably on turn 1 as well, which means you've, jumped through that hoop as quickly as possible. Getting that side scheme in the victory display helps you set up quickly. The quicker you set up, the less likely it is for mission planning to pass you by when you're not set up. So you're kind of jumping through 2 hoops there. And call for backup, bringing in an ally, kind of was also jumping through the middle hoop. So he can really quickly get set up to have big value from mission planning. Now, what I like to do with Cable with Call for Backup is to use Call for Backup to grab Captain Marvel. So the flow of play goes something like this. You get your opening hand, you do all your mulligans. Normally I'm pretty conservative with mulligans in these decks, by the way, if I have decent options to begin with, just because I don't want to blow past mission planning too early. I will look for some kind of threat removal. Any of the allies, lead from the front or mind scan. As long as I've got one of those in my hand, I can guarantee I can deal with call for backup on turn 1 in solo play. In multiplayer, it might take a bit more effort. Hopefully, your other player can maybe chip in with something. It will vary. But yeah, definitely in solo, very easy to be able to guarantee defeating call for backup. So after you've done your opening hand and mulligan, you'd use the setup ability to put call for backup into play. So yeah, call for backup goes down, and then I play whatever cards necessary to defeat it. For argument's sake here, let's say lead from the front. I think an ally is better, so I think this is a good sort of middle ground example of how you could defeat it. So lead from the front is a 2-cost event that increases you and your allies' stats by +1, excluding defense, so attack and thwarting. So now Cable has a total of 3 thwarting, which he can use to one-shot call for backup from defeating the side scheme he already up, but also defeating call for backup lets him choose an ally. Captain Marvel is our choice. That's why we have so many energies. That is why the deck looks, that is really why the deck looks different here, because we have all these energies. So Captain Marvel will come into play. She will discard 4 cards. If she finds an energy resource, she deals 3 damage to an enemy. If she finds a second energy resource in those 4 cards she discards, she will stun that enemy. So normally I pick the villain, and that means, with all these energies, she is normally always hitting both, definitely always at least damage in my experience. And that is very, very strong. So then she can attack, and because Cable is readied, he can actually attack now. And they're both benefiting from lead from the front. So play lead from the front, defeat call for backup. Captain Marvel comes in and does 3 damage and stuns the villain. Then she can attack for 4, and you can attack for 3, which, if my maths is right, gets you up to, let's see, 10 damage. There's a 10 damage opening, and the villain is stunned. And the best thing about that is you still have 3 cards left in hand you've only played lead from the front at this point. So yeah, 10 damage and a stun and Captain Marvel on the board. And you've only spent 3 cards, 3 effective resources. You could play maybe, some kind of other ally. You could set up a command team. If you have a double resource, you can be very flexible. If you find White Tiger early on, you can get some, really good shenanigans going on, drawing 2 cards in expert mode at the start most of the time. Um, I've even had games where I've ended up with 3 allies in play in turn 1, including Captain Marvel, which is just so good to get mission planning set up. And you can imagine the kind of damage. I'm dealing 10 damage here just with Captain Marvel and lead from the front. Before I even factor in the mission planning and Sky Cycle side of the deck, you get a really good head start and just, smash the villain. It's like I say, almost a rush deck. It's a very unconventional style, but it works really well. It works when it works, we'll put it that way. But with Cable, I think it is pretty consistent. Um, Damage, it can be as low as 8 damage, or it can be as high as maybe 13, maybe more, but 13 is definitely the highest I've actually had happen. So pretty strong, in my opinion, very consistent. There are, Mind Scan lead from the front, the allies. There are 12 cards total in your 40 cards that can let you defeat that call for backup turn 1. Cannot overstate how good and consistent that is. Don't think many people are talking about lead from the front for Cable, but I think it is good. Even with his uncanny X-Force build, since they don't take consequential damage, you can put readying in those. So yeah, readying and Cable actually go together pretty well. And yeah, then you're basically set to go. You can even get Sky Cycle set up on Captain Marvel on turn 1 if you happen to find one, or anything else, going. You can even set up another player side scheme just to buy yourself more time with, say, Established Perimeter. I actually didn't include build support here because it's a mental resource. And like I say, these games almost go like rush games for me. Just getting like Captain Marvel turn 1, it's already putting me on the path to be able to, just destroy the villain. Games aren't going on a ton of time. Though I will say, if I do Grey Malkin, find it on turn 1, I might still play it just because it gives you that really, really, really good resource generation. But yeah, these are just some examples of, one style, the command team and Sky Cycle style of mission planning. Hopefully it's been fun. Hopefully it's, actually enticed you to maybe try and use the card, try a deck like this or, along these lines. So do I think mission planning is the worst card in Next Evolution? Obviously no, and hopefully you guys can now see why. Is it the best? No, but it's okay not to be the best. If every, new leadership card had to be, really among the best, had to be competitive and fighting for use in every single deck, we would see a lot of power creep in every release in Marvel Champions. And I don't think that's healthy for the game. That's not what I want. And I do think this card is good enough and particularly fun enough to see a good amount of use. Pretty niche decks, but nonetheless a fun kind of new archetype of this kind of different style of readying allies. I've actually, there are different ways you can use this. If you guys have a different way to use it, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences. Jungle94 is a user who commented a couple of days ago using it with Mars Morales, with Command Team and the Peter Parker basic ally. Call for backup to get Peter Parker into play, then Command Teams to keep readying him, but mission planning to keep him alive with all those readies, to keep readying Miles up. Tons of value there, really, really fun. So anything like that, let me know. This is about the end of the video. Appreciate you guys listening if you stuck it out this far. This kind of video, taking one card, focusing on it, talking about it, identifying how you can use it in deck building and get the most out of it, that is one of the things that inspired me to make this channel. I've really enjoyed doing this, so hopefully you guys like it. Let me know if you want more. If you do want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Hope you guys are enjoying Next Evolution, and I hope you have a great day.